All right, welcome to today's show. We're going to jump in and talk about MSTR. What could it be worth if you put $1 million in or $10,000 in? Not tax advice, not financial advice, not legal advice. Do your own research on anything that's shared on this show or anything in general. But we're going to talk about that. Secondly, going to jump into BMNR. They keep buying, but they're also staking. So what does that actually mean for the stock when they're staking a big portion of their Ethereum? I'm also going to get into a trading strategy that I've been using on BMNR and walk you through what that trading strategy could have done over a 60-day period. And we're going to jump in and talk about MSTR continues to buy more. And what does that mean for the future of the company? So BMNR, MSTR, what's happening in the markets right now? None of this is tax advice, financial advice, or legal advice. Do your own research and let's get rocking and rolling. Okay. So if you look right here, BMNR stock dropped. It went down to about 28 the other day, and now it's back up. What is going on with the stock? Well, it dropped 9.3% in one day. The stock, it was around $28. It's now around $29.24. But this drop didn't happen in a bubble. A lot of scary world news plus money news is happening at the same time, and that makes investors quite nervous. Big world news: Donald Trump doing stuff with tariffs, doing stuff with Greenland, U.S. territory, as you see here on the sign right there on the meme. But sometimes markets don't crash because of a company. They crash because people feel uncertain, and there's lots of uncertainty going on in the marketplace. When governments start talking about big global moves like the Greenland situation, investors often get a bit shaky. So more news coming in. If you've been watching this at all with Japan, the cheap money warning sign, Japan bond yield. So this part's important. Japan used to have super cheap money for a long time. What does that mean? They could borrow money super cheaply. And they used it. They would borrow money and then they would use it to buy stocks and crypto and risky investments. But now their 40-year bond yield hit an all-time high, which means it's expensive to borrow money for Japan. So that means there's less likely to have money going into stocks, crypto, and risky investments, which affects the global markets and, of course, affects the assets that you see on the screen as well. So now we know that Japan it's a lot more expensive to borrow money. Now, even after the stock drop for BMNR, they still bought massive amounts of Ethereum. If you look at their total crypto holdings right now, they got $14.5 billion in total crypto. The majority of that is Ethereum, and they got about $1 billion in cash. Now, 4.2 million ETH, 192 Bitcoin, 979 million in cash, and they have some other holdings as well, as you know. So even if the stock price moves up and down, the company still owns a lot of assets. That's why I'm high on BMNR and I like the stock. Right? BMNR is ranked around number 60 out of 5,000 stocks in trading volume. So when you look at their trading volume, they're traded about $1.5 billion worth per day if you do this over a 5-day average. So $1.5 billion a day is a lot. It's a lot of liquidity. And if you look at BMNR and MSTR, they control most of the digital asset treasury market. About 90% of the trading is done between these two stocks. So 60% MSTR, BMNR about 30% of the trading volume. Two combined is 90% of all the action. Okay. Now look at BMNR. You may have seen this before, but if you look at the accumulation in terms of them accumulating Ethereum on their balance sheet, they accumulated about $14 billion, and they've accumulated that in about a 7-month period, 6 to 7 months. If you look at that, that's insanely fast. We know it took strategy years and years to build up to that level, and BMNR is accumulating Ethereum at a record pace. The shares outstanding for the company are 442 million approximately. That's what's the estimated that's outstanding. Of course, investors are paying attention to this. More shares often means ownership gets spread out. It can affect the price movement, and it's something long-term investors always track. Now, if you look at the ETH purchases, you look at this very similar story with BMNR to MSTR. MSTR continues to buy and buy and buy, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But if you look at the ETH purchases by BMNR, you take a look from November 3rd, they were buying lots of ETH, 382 million at the bottom. 182, 205, 290, look in the green. Then you look at the yellow. In December, the buying was big as well. Buying's still there, not as big, but 104 million, 75 million, 107 million. So they're still buying every single week, and they're sticking to their strategy, and they're going for their 5% goal to get 5% Ethereum on their balance sheet. So that's what they've been buying, about 100 million. BitMine's already done with 70% of that goal, which is pretty spectacular, right? So the goal is 5%. They're at about 3.5% of the Ethereum supply that they hold on their balance sheet. which is incredibly impressive. And they've done it in 7 months. So right now, as I shared before, they own about 4.2 million ETH, and it took only 7 months. So pretty impressive what they're doing in the marketplace right now. And they continue to acquire fast. Now, if you look at the shares outstanding of 442 million, this is an estimate, and you look at the net asset value per share, it's $30. But if you look at the stock price, as of yesterday, it was $28.24, but the stock price today is about $29.24. All right, so they're still below, they're trading below on their MNAV. Their MNAV isn't quite 1 right now. And so anytime it's trading below the net asset value of their Ethereum, you can pick it up at a discount. You typically don't want them hitting the tapping the ATM, meaning issuing more shares when it's below $1, because that would be dilutive for shareholders. You want them tapping the ATM when it's above 1. So right now they're at 0.93. All right. Actually, they're a little bit higher because the stock today is at 29 bucks. All right. So you're buying the assets at a small discount right now. You have to do your research on this because it's just an estimate. But if someone were to buy right now, they're buying it at a discount. Now, when you take a look at the staking, which is a very, very interesting thing, if you've been following my videos, staking is a very big part of BMNR. Now, why? If you look at Strategy is a company that accumulates Bitcoin. They hold it on their balance sheet. That's digital gold. If you look at BMNR, they're accumulating Ethereum. They're holding on it. They're on their balance sheet, but they're also staking it. And so when they stake it, they get a yield off the Ethereum that they stake. And if you take a look at what's been staked so far, BitMine total staked stands at 1,838,000. So that's about $5.9 billion of Ethereum, which is pretty significant. That's almost 50% of their entire ETH supply. So that means off the money that they stake, the Ethereum they stake, I should say, they're going to get an income stream off of that. And that just changes the whole dynamics for the stock. It's no longer just about Ethereum continuing to grow on the balance sheet, which is incredibly impressive with a 5% goal of Ethereum that they want on the balance sheet. But the next impressive thing is the staking yield they're going to generate. We're looking at a company, if they're staking $6 billion, they could be pulling in $180 million or more of just income every single year from the Ethereum that they're staking. Now imagine if they stake $13 billion of Ethereum, we're looking at potentially $400 or $500 million of income coming in. And as their ETH supply, they get more and more of the supply of ETH, and ETH grows on their balance sheet, and they stake more and more. We're talking about a company that one day could have $1 billion of income coming in every year. I think investors are going to take notice of this. So it's very, very impressive. And if you look at their staking schedule down here, 12/28, they started staking 1/4, 1/11, 1/19. They keep staking progressively more every single week, which is huge, right? So as of now, 1.8 million ETH is staked. That's 44% of all their Ethereum. That's pretty insane. So just weeks ago, this number was much, much, much smaller, okay? Now let's switch to Bitcoin side of the game. Also, if you want to get my money game book, you can click down below. And you can get my money game book, and you can also get my trading strategy. Now, there's a reason why I actually trade BMNR, and I'm going to show it to you here in a second. I actually trade BMNR. And so what I'm about to show you is a combination of technology from TradingView and also Invest Answers. So if you want to pick this up, you would get TradingView and Invest Answers scripts on this. Now, I happen to trade with this, and you can get my money game book down below and my trading strategy down below for free if this intrigues you. But this is very, very fascinating to take a look at this, because when a lot of people are sitting in the marketplace right now and they are just let's say I own BMNR and I'm just sitting on it. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up and down. It's not moving. But with this trading strategy, what's incredibly fascinating is we tracked this, and I've been trading BMNR for the last 5 or 6 months. And so if you look at this is on the 2-hour time frame. And if you track this trading strategy, let's say I sold out here on BMNR where the blue line turns to yellow at $32. I hold BMNR, so my strategy is to sell out and buy back lower. So at $32, you could have sold out. And then if you watch this go all the way down, this is the 2-hour charts, it goes all the way down. And then the indicator to buy back in would be when it flips from yellow to blue again here, if you see here. So you would have sold out at $32 if you followed this chart, and you would have bought back in at $28. So what is that? That's almost like an 8% gain or something. in terms of picking up more shares, all right? Because it's selling high and buying back low. Now, it's like, okay, Ted, well, that's just one instance, and that's over from Thursday, January 15th, all the way to January 21st. Now, I really like this because in trading, there's times where I trade every single day, and there's times where I just want to trade once a week. And this gives you the opportunity to just trade about once a week. And so if you scroll back here and then you look at this period, if you were to buy in here on BMNR, yellow to blue here, when it goes from yellow to blue, I buy in when it gets fat, when this trend line gets more fat and blue here. This is when I buy in because it's safer. So if you had bought in at $30.76 and you rode the trend line all the way up till it turned yellow again, that would have been like another 3% gain right there of buying in and selling out. People buy in and sell out. Again, not tax advice, not financial advice. I'm just giving you theory on this, okay? And then if you go all the way back and you trade this again, like look how clean these lines are. It's insane. Again, if you want to get my trading strategy down below, you can click the link. My book is free. And then there's a whole video that goes in depth on this. But again, this is the tech of TradingView and Invest Answers, okay? So down here, if you look at this blue line here, if I sold out here on the blue, where the blue goes to yellow, I would have sold out when it gets kind of fat here on the yellow. I would have sold out at $32, and then I would have bought back in at $30.80, and I would have picked up another, what, like 3% there as well. So the point is we track this, and now it gets even more impressive when you see the big moves. Like if I had bought in on BMNR here, when it goes yellow to blue, because the indicators, when it goes yellow to blue, this is a sign to buy in. And so I would have bought in at $27.77, and I would have sold out here when the line turns yellow at like $32. So that is like a 12 or 13% gain there. Now you got to do the math yourself. I'm just estimating. So we track this. Me and one of my team members track this back for about 60 days with BMNR. And looking at the charts, buying, selling, buying, selling. If you had bought, sold, bought, sold, bought, sold, it was about a 34% gain if you traded this over the course of 60 days. And look how clean the lines are. Like you're trading the 2-hour chart here. So these lines from yellow to blue are super clean, man. Like super clean. Like this is ideal stuff here. Ideal stuff. So anyway, that's a little bit about it. We were going over this with one of my groups yesterday. The whole conversation last night, BMNR was like at $29.25, and it was almost about to turn blue. And people were asking me like, what would you do here? What would you do here? I'm like, it's not blue yet. I'm not pulling the trigger on this. And we waited this morning, and even this morning when the sign came up to buy, it was actually below 29 bucks. So you would have been better off waiting. So there you go. So that is the game. Again, I'm not telling anybody to invest in anything, buy anything, or trade. I'm just saying get educated. This has been an incredible strategy for me trading BMNR because it's just, I like picking up more shares of the stock. So that's what I do. And then there's a bunch of my peers who they just buy in and they sell out. They don't even care about BMNR. They just like to buy in and sell out. And the reason they do that is because they just want to make cash, and they're doing it, which is pretty freaking cool, right? So just little strokes, different strokes for different folks. The question I always get about trading is, Ted, I don't want to sit in front of charts all day. Well, if you look at this trading strategy here, if you were to place the trades that I just showed, this is not like, if I go here, these are like these time frames here on trading. This is an entire 6 days here. So you would have placed one trade in 6 days, and then you go here. This is a shorter time frame here, but because you're trading on the 2-hour, this is January 12th where I would have bought, and then you go here, and it goes to the 15th. That's 3 days. So a lot of times people think with trading, they're like, "Yo, I gotta trade. I gotta be in front of the screen all the time," and it's not actually true, because in this scenario, this is another trade here. In this scenario, on January 26th, I would have sold out here and then taken it all the way down. And that's over on January 7th is when the first trade would have happened, and then buying back in on the 12th. It's a 5-day period. So you're looking at these trades 5 days, 3 days, 6 days. You're not glued to the charts. And that's always the biggest question I get. I don't want to be a trader. I don't want to be glued to the chart. And it's just smart smart investing. So, or smart investing, smart trading. Because following the charts with good technical analysis makes sense. So thank you to James over at Invest Answers, and thank you to TradingView for this great technical charts we have here. All right, cool. Again, if you want to get anything on my book down below, go grab Money Game. It's a great book. I think you'll dig it. Let's continue with the rest of the presentation here. Okay, so let's switch to the Bitcoin side of the game now. And Saylor's buying Bitcoin nonstop. I mean, this guy just keeps going and going and going. 22,000 Bitcoin acquired recently. Like $2 billion, man. They now have 709,000 Bitcoin. I mean, he's just buying like a freaking madman. 2.13 billion they recently bought. Strategy 709, man. Look at Strategy, just crushing it. Look at their balance sheet. If you take a look at their perpetual preferred equity is now larger than their convertible debt. So if you look at their products like Stride and Strife and Stretch, which have been the hot products in the marketplace, they are just crushing it with this. And there's such a big demand in their recent raise of $2 billion. A lot of it came from Stretch. So they're just crushing it. There's huge demand in the marketplace, even when there's uncertainty. Here's a little comment from Adam Livingston here. He does a little MSTR moon math. I'm going to take you through the scenario. Adam's really good. Loves MSTR. Great guy. Don't know him personally, but I like his stuff. So MSTR moon math here. If Bitcoin keeps growing for many years, Strategy could grow even faster. And this is the chart that explains it. So a lot of times you have people have questions about like, should I invest in gold or S&P 500 or Bitcoin or MSTR? Well, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just giving you some data here, right? This chart is basically a race. Here's who's running. You got Bitcoin, you got Strategy, you got gold, you have S&P 500. You take a quick trip back in time and you look since the year 2000, gold went up a lot. S&P 500 also went up as well. But they grew like this, slow and steady. Gold grew around 11%, S&P 500 about 8 to 9% when you look at dividends on it. And but now watch what happens when Bitcoin enters the scene here. Saylor says Bitcoin can grow around 30% per year in the long term. So if you listen to Saylor, he talks about 29 to 30% Bitcoin growing over the next 29 years or 20 years or so. And so this is moon math, so it's fine. Like this may never happen. If we're half right on this, then great. If we're wrong, it's just a hypothetical example here, right? So instead of 30%, let's say Bitcoin grows by 15% a year. Now, if you start with $1 million in Bitcoin or $1 million in an investment, gold would become 16.6 million. S&P 500 would become 4.9 million. Bitcoin becomes 37.9 million, and MSTR becomes 87.2 million. Okay. I think you also want to adjust this math too, even though this is done based from the year 2000. You would definitely want to adjust the math moving forward on the S&P 500 because S&P 500 is doing a lot better than it has over the last, in 2000 it was lower, and in 2023, 24, 25, the S&P has been doing a lot better. Now, because of the printing of money and the amount of money that was printed during COVID, it rose the stock market a lot, which is why there's a big change in the S&P 500. But that's another story. Bitcoin over that time frame would have grown to 37 million. So Bitcoin would have dusted the S&P 500, and MSTR would have done $87 million. Okay. So the simple lesson is Bitcoin beats gold in stocks. MSTR beats Bitcoin in this scenario. So what if Saylor's actually are right? Instead of taking 15%, what if Bitcoin does 30% over the next 20 years? MSTR with the Saylor model could grow around 37.5% per year. And if you put $1 million in, it could become $584 million in 20 years. So that's pretty significant, right? We're just going to look at that one more time. When you look at MSTR, let's say MSTR grew at 37.5% per year, right? This is just kind of moon math, like hypothetical. If Bitcoin does 30, Strategy should grow by more. So $1 million in over 20 years is $584 million. Pretty impressive. That's with Strategy. Now, again, not a promise. Math story based on big assumptions. This is what Adam Livingston drew out, and I'm sharing it with you. Okay. Now, if you look at who's stacking Stretch, which is one of Strategy's products that they issue out in the marketplace to get money and buy more Bitcoin, and they pay approximately 10%. If you look at BlackRock here, they now have a $2.12 million position in Stretch. $2.12 million in Stretch. And then you look at FMR, which is Fidelity, 1.76 million. So you look at the companies that are stacking Stretch. You have lots of institutions that are stacking Stretch here, which is huge. And BlackRock is everywhere. They're just stacking stuff, man. Vanguard, this is huge news, just bought 680 million worth of MSTR. So if you look at Vanguard ETFs, they buy $680 million of strategy shares. Somebody's buying when strategy's down, man. I got to tell you, right? $12 trillion asset manager disclosed its ETFs added 680 million in the past 2 weeks. Okay. Why Bitcoin's moving like a crazy ride right now? Well, here's what happened. Bitcoin pumped from 88,000 to 90. That liquidated 80 million in shorts. And shorts are people betting that Bitcoin will go down. And then Bitcoin dumped from 90,000, 90.5 to 87.3. That liquidated 144 million in longs. So it's all over the place. Lots of liquidations happening. Longs are people betting Bitcoin will go up. Then Bitcoin pumped again from 87,000 to 90. That liquidated 202 million of shorts again. So it's back and forth, back and forth. The traders are loving it. So in one day, you have total liquidations of $1 billion. All right. That's the scene. That's the game. That's what's going on. I hope you guys are doing fantastically well. Not quite the ride we're expecting from January to 1st to January 22nd. Bitcoin's kind of flat, but and BMNR and MSTR, but we will see what happens in 2026. Lots of institutions are buying. The demand is still there, and we will see what happens into the future. I hope you have a great day. Grab my money game book down below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe it, like it, and I hope you're fantastic and have a great week. See you soon.